just keep the space?
Yes, because it is actually difficult to handle these two things together. Private sector resilience, we're working with BGMEA on developing strategies for private sector resilience, particularly supply chain resilience, how to integrate disaster and climate change issues into their supply chain. So we conducted this study with collaboration with BGMEA. Another one is impact of water logging on local trade. As you know, this
Try to get to use the microphone, but you can slow on.
Okay. Economic impact of water logging on local trade in Chattogram. This study was conducted on demand of Chittagong Chamber of Commerce and Industry to see what is the impact of water logging on local trade, particularly case study is the Khatunggunj district. And now we are working with Bangladesh Economic Zone Authority to establish business continuity plan in two selected economic zones. One is Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar, located in Mirsharai, Chattogram, and another one is Magna Industrial Economic Zone, Shunargaon, Narayanganj. There will be area level BCP, business continuity plan, for the whole area, other economic zones, two economic zones, and also industry level or enterprise level BCP for particular industries or enterprises located in those two economic zones. Next slide. This is the disaster impact assessment tool, which I am going to talk about now. So disaster, it's an ex-ante disaster impact assessment tool. It's a probabilistic assessment of risk, so that risks can be integrated into the national level development planning process, particularly government investment planning process. So how this came up? It was made a decision, an NDMC, national. If you follow the NDMC meeting minutes and NDMC decisions, you will find in 2015 NDMC decisions. So there was you have to, it's just proposed that to conduct disaster impact assessment like the EIA. Also, if you see this Prime Minister directives in different executive committee for National Economic Council, there are lots of Prime Minister directives on disaster impact assessment, also environmental sustainability issues. So, like this, it was one decision in 2015, like DIA, to develop something, tools and frameworks of economic disaster impact assessment, and it was followed up in 2017. Then DIA issue came up in the SOD 2019. If you go through the SOD section 5.2.25 and 5.2.26, you'll get it there. And the responsibility is given to Bangladesh Planning Commission to develop that tool and framework so that they can assess the investment projects, whether they are integrating disaster and climate change issues into their proposed development projects. Next slide. And also, DIA and DRIP issues, Disaster Risk Information Platform in the 85-year plan, and also the NPDM National Plan for Disaster Management. So you will find both these tools. So DI and tool has a strong foothold on the national level policy and programs and plans. Next slide. So it is already integrated in the feasibility study report template. So this is nothing new, but in a sense it is a bit also new. In that sense, if you are aware about the national development planning process, so there are some rules and regulations like that. If the project value is more than 50 crore, then each and every project should conduct a feasibility study report. It was earlier there, feasibility study, but different format was used. In recent time, the ACNIC wing, Economic Council of National Economic Executive Council for National Council wing, they have developed a certain template to develop that report. So in that report, disaster and climate change issues and impact assessment issues are there. So next slide. And another one is important document is government document. Is this one is a manual or also procedure, popularly known as Green Book and Poripatra. This is used for development planning. So all these development planning procedures, they use this book to design development projects, to plan, monitor, and implementation. So in that book, there are, particularly in the investment projects, there is a specific section, section 24.3 and section 31 in English template and 30 in Bangla template. And section 24.3 talks about impact of disaster, impact of climate change and future disaster management, and section 31 calls for the risk analysis. So to address this section, particularly impact of disaster, impact of climate change and future disaster management. This tool is developed, DI, this disaster impact assessment tool is developed to assess whether these climate and disaster issues are considering in the proposed development project. So this is the DI address two things. First is whether proposed projects or interventions is threatened or impacted by existing hazard in development, or itself increase the intensity, frequency of risk and may generate new risk. Very simple. Impact of proposed development projects, impact of disaster, impact of hazards on the proposed development projects, and also impact of proposed development projects on hazard. Something like that. So impact of hazard, disaster or hazards on that proposed development projects, how it is going to be flood or cyclone, how it is going to be impact that proposed development projects, or it is going to accelerate the existing risk, flood risk or cyclone risk, and whether it is going to generate new risk. In the suppose one is embankment is constructed, or building is constructed, or certain areas taken for economic use or any other areas, for implementation of that economic zones or that particular project development projects, whether they are going to new risks like waterlogging or some different new hazards in that area. And also second is the countermeasures, the proposed countermeasures, and what are the measures taken by that proposed development projects, how they are going to address that risk. It is applicable for both ways, for existing risk, and also if it is going to generate new risk, then what will be the countermeasures. So this both tool is developed consultation with several stakeholders, particularly government stakeholders. DI was consulted with the other development partners and development NGOs. It was led by ActionAid Bangladesh. Thanks to ActionAid for arranging that consultation. And it was each and every tool and framework is actually approved by an interministerial committee, and also included that one the experts from disaster and climate change experts from Dhaka University and WIT. So next slide. So it's a very simple principle. So simple yet comprehensive. There are, as I said earlier, so government has some rules and regulations, also framework for developing investment projects. So that's why it was kept simple, considering that existing government plans, policy and frameworks, not introducing new tools and frameworks, so that they don't think it's a burden for the development planning officials. And also living document, it can be changed. And new things can be added here, considering the context. And also no new analysis. So issues will be either in the feasibility study input template, or it will be readily available to them, so they can use any information for that analysis. They don't collect new data or new information for conduct that analysis. And framework scope is applicable for at this stage. This is introduced this year, so it is GI will be applicable only for project level only, infrastructure project, and consideration of services. We consider infrastructure not only as structure or building materials, but also it provides services. So service is specific emphasis on given services. Consideration the chain of hazard and gender vulnerability. Next slide. So there are six steps. So what the project intervention is located, and what will be the impact of hazards on that one. As I said earlier, it's the impact of hazard on proposed development projects, and also those that are going to develop that development proposal, they have to analyze the impact of proposed development project hazards, whether it's going to generate new hazard, new risk, and then listing of proposed counter hazards, addressing vulnerability and also addressing hazards. And step 4 is assessment of resilience, emergency management plan, service continuity plan, and type recovery. And step 5, estimating the cost of DRR. This is actually important for the decision makers. They will consider what is the cost of DRR and what is the total cost of the project. If the total cost, considering this total cost of the project and the DRR, they make decisions whether they will going to implement that project in the certain area, or they will get alternative options for that one. And go back. Such stage is the residual risk. So risk is never be zero. So there will be some risk. So how to communicate the tricks with the stakeholders. So if there is an embankment, if Bangladesh Water Development Board construct embankment along the rivers, so this is not the end. so it can be breached. So that information should be communicated with the community. So this is the step 6. So within this, within the 6 steps, government is very much focused on all the steps except step 5, step 4. Step 4 is quite, this is new, and it also requires some time and expertise to develop the emergency management plan. Government capacities, government has some lack of capacities preparing the emergency management plan, service continuity plan, and time of recovery. Time of recovery is crucial, but it requires some time to assess if an embankment is breached. The Water Development Board should tell how many months or how much time they should need to construct that the embankments. So we are working on that. So how to assess this one? The next slide. So it will be a checklist like this format, and the next slide. So this format. So it will be in the DPP, in the particular development project. So government can make those who will review this project, they will prepare this project, they will have an idea what will be the impact of this hazard on that particular project interventions, and what will be the decision by this committee, decision-making committee, or technical committee, those who reviews the DPPs and also approve the DPPs, development proposals. And if you see these 6 steps, so first one is the location of the hazard, and second is the impact of hazard on that development project, and also impact of proposed development project on hazards. So it requires, particularly the risk assessment, this requires actually huge data and information. So government, if a particular, as we said earlier, so there is no particular this sort of mechanism collecting also all sorts of disaster-related risk information to government. If you ask them for the Union Parishad level, they don't have data. If you ask the Upazila level, it's difficult for them to get the data and for the register risk assessment. So we're trying to collect all those data, prepare for the government, so they can generate a report, attach that report into the development projects, so the decision makers or the reviewers who review these development projects, they can see what are the hazards on that particular area which is going to impact that proposed development projects. So we are. This is called the. I think I'll show you. I'll take you that this link. I'll visit that link later and show you how this works. Yeah. This is the disaster and climate risk information platforms. Mainly, it is prepared for the planning officials, particularly planning officials, those who are involved in development project preparation. So they will generate a risk report using this platform and address, design and plan the project accordingly. It's it's integrated informations, common platform. So particularly for the limitations, it is for the government officials. They will have the risk assessment. They will generate a report. They will also indications on what kind of countermeasures they may address, they may taken to address this disaster risk. And it is already a forward data ecosystem approach, already linked with few other government initiatives, like there is called the AMS or ADB management systems, which is managed by the government Bangladesh Planning Commission or Programming Division for Development Budget. So it is linked with that. So there will be some unapproved project. So what will be the impact of unapproved project of disasters? They will identify it later when they will submit the full DPP or submit for the project approval. They have to address these issues. It is already in their AMS system. It is already also hosted by the AMS system. And another one is it's called the SDP projects or digital ACNEC projects. Government is going to digitalization all the development project proposals. So it is already there. So there will be section 24.3. It is linked with that when they will use this particular drip. So there will be report generation, and it will be actually attached as an annex in that DPP proposal. And also they will extract the information. This report is quite big. It is 15 to 17 page. So when there will be the report, they will extract the information from that one, so that the decision makers or the approval committee, they can easily identify what are the hazards, what will be the impact, and what is the particularly budget requirement for that one. whether they will be approved it or they are going to actually propose something alternatives for that. Next slide. So all the disaster risk assessment data and information used in the trip is collected from another projects. It was project by Asian Development Bank, the climate action in South Asia. So they used the project. So it took 2.5 years to prepare all this risk assessment data. So they prepare it. So you can follow this link and get all the informations, the methodology, and also this report and maps. There are more than 300 maps on risk, vulnerability, exposure maps. So you can get all these reports there. Yes, it was. This report was prepared by though it's financed by the Asian Development Bank, but it was approved through an interministerial committee. Interministerial committee members from different technical committee and different technical agencies of the government of Bangladesh. Also experts, so far as I remember, experts from Buet and Dhaka University. Thanks. And this I think everyone is used this risk assessment frameworks. There's nothing more than explain. Next slide. Here, hazard risk is defined as the product of hazard and impact. Impact is defined here as summation of exposure and vulnerability. But they define it in a different way. They say the impact is 1, but exposure will be 70% of that impact and 30% of the vulnerability. This is how they define this one. Because, but there is no specific theoretical construct of that, how they choose 70 and 30%, but it is an expert approach, an empirical approach derived by the expert. Next slide. For cyclone, there are 5 indicators they use for the exposure: population, settlement, infrastructure, forest and crops. And vulnerability is defined into the small p or small vulnerability by the adaptability. So percentage of contribution this is how they use this method for assessment of the exposure. Next slide. The hazard. There are 11 hazards. So there are 10 hazards. All the hydrometeorological hazards is here. So they use here also again this and 2 geophysical hazards, and they also use the expert they use the mostly on literature review and expert judgment to identify which area is mostly affected by the hazards. So there are 5 classification. They identify the districts, which area is affected by the which hazard, identify first they one, and they identify they classify this hazard into very high, low, and as per the 5 nominal scale, very high, medium, low, and very low. So as after that, they identify which area, which particular district is affected by which flood or which hazards. This is the exposure one, as I said earlier. So there are 5 particular indicator for exposures collected from BBS, Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics, collected from Bureau of Statistics, LGD, I think this is the Forest Department. This 5.1 is all this information, all this data at the district level. And this is the vulnerability, the socioeconomic condition. They use the poverty, education, gender, and livelihood. And socioeconomic capacity is the medical facilities of that particular district, and cyclone shelter, embankment, and irrigation facilities. So there are more actually detail in this report. I'm not gonna explain each and everything in that way. They use this hazard consequence of vulnerability. It's 30% vulnerability and 70% the exposure. So this is how they define. If the point is 1 to 1.8 is they identify as very low, and very high is 4.2 to 5 is the very high. And thus they use the risk scoring. Next slide. And they use the risk scoring. So this is how risk is calculated, and this method used in the DRIP for the risk assessment. The big question of the sustainability, how DRIP will sustain. Because we have seen today that there are so many platforms, particularly the planning commission I have seen, there are so many platforms but sustain after the projects. So how this will sustain? What are the initiatives that have been taken to sustain this one? One is, it is a strong, as I said, it is already a strong foothold in the existing policy and documentation. Before all these documents, all these platforms were not in the policy and plans. Like feasibility study good template. Already it is practiced by the different divisions and government agencies, by the Planning Commission and other government agencies using DRIP for the feasibility study template. So somehow they are compelled. If the project value is 50 crore, they have to use it. They have to identify the disaster impact of disaster risk assessment. And then the public sector development project proposal approval revisions. It is already in there. It will be approved by the Honorable Prime Minister in next Economic Council meeting in May. So this is in these two projects. So they have to identify the impact of disasters on the proposed development projects or impact of proposed development on that particular hazard and disasters. And programming division, which is still hosted by this DRIP, is going to propose to establish an ICT cell, super ICT cell, because they are at present they are hosting two particular platforms, which is very important for the government. One is managing the development budget, is the AMS and management system, another is the DRIP. So government already established programming shall establish a super ICT cell, which is in the finance ministry under approval of finance ministry, and linking with other development projects. So linking with already it is linked with Adobe management system and government digitalization of development project systems. So we are discussing, already discussion is going on to get more knowledge, more information from the Delta Plan Knowledge Hub, which is particularly for government is developed for the climate change issues, and also National Special Data Infrastructure. This is developed by the Survey of Bangladesh. And already we have trained more than 200 government officials on DIA DRIP and mainstreaming of disaster into the development, investment and development project and investment projects. And also, as I said, it's a district level data. So there are lots of opportunities. It's not the end, it's the beginning. The DRIP is the beginning of risk assessment, I think, a formalized way, an institutionalized way of risk assessment in Bangladesh. So already we have established an interministerial committee for data upgradations, for improvement and other things. We had a meeting with the Bangladesh Meteorological Department, or the meeting with the Bangladesh Water Development Board and other different government agencies who are generating data, different levels and types of disaster risk related data and information to get that one. I think let's directly go to this website and show how does it work, this one. I think you can use this one in your phone. This is easily accessible through your phone.
WhatsApp is send you like over WhatsApp and email in both platform.
Can we go to this?
It's already shared on your WhatsApp. The DRIP platform. Let's take it to the DRIP platform and let's see how we can use that information in our area and how that's considered.
The whole way I'm getting in the WhatsApp, I have shared with you the minor. So you can check it.
Also going live on the platform.
Yeah. think this is showing the phone version, not the laptop version.
Environmental analysis, 50 code appliances. More than 50 codes.
Yeah. This one? I think this one, anyone can access this one. But for generation of the report is only for the government officials at this stage.
Before we fix this, Jai, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So you've mentioned that the function that you have used, you have given weight 0.3 to vulnerability and 0.7 to exposure.
Yeah.
That's the calculation. But is it a global methodology or is it something Bangladesh?
It's not a global methodology. It's methodology used by experts and approved by an interministerial committee.
Okay. Because the results could be very different if you check.
Yeah, sure.
I have one small
Sure.
query. I think I am louder enough, so.
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah.
If I understand properly, I think this tool is basically for the infrastructure or developmental project and to know the impact of the pre-identified hazard on that particular project.
Exactly.
But we saw there is already many ongoing or that is some infrastructural projects. For example, the Mother-Bari coal power project, and this project itself has created many hazards. And
Okay, I think I have
so now
understand your questions.
my question is, so is this tool is applicable for that type of project after when in the middle of the any development project, if already any hazard, it is responsible for create any new hazard. So is this tool applicable to measure that impact of that project?
Yeah. There are some mechanisms there. Thank you.
I think.
Also, guide them through this. From here, so come here.
Okay.
So, Jayant, can you, we'll do 2-3 minutes and then we'll go for break and then we'll continue the discussion because
Okay.
it's still 12 p.m. So, yep.
I think this is, if you go to the home, if you go get the slides, it's about the loss and damage of different times and different areas and different disasters. This will tell you these things. This is the aim of this trip. So mainly the trip is aimed to public government officials. They will use this. Those particularly the planning officials, they call the planning officials, involved in DPP preparation and development project proposal preparation. So it is prepared to support them or to help them, to facilitate them. Whether disaster risk or climate change risk are integrated into the proposed development projects. In another way, mainstreaming disaster and climate change related risks and information into the proposed development projects. And is the objective? It's integrated information. So information is available. All this information is sent to various different agencies. So for TRIP, there are 14 agencies. Data is collected from 14 agencies for the disaster risk assessment. For government officials to collect information from 14 agencies and analyze them is quite difficult. So all this information will be available in this one. So they will, it's just a few clicks away from them. They will use this and generate that report and analyze accordingly. And the future, there is also climate change issues. Though it is not impact of climate change on the particular disasters is not assessed, but there are some scenarios developed based on scenarios 4.5 and 8.5. So you will be there, you will find what is the impact of climate change on temperature. It's for 10-year scale, 2030, 2050. There are some annual analysis, seasonal analysis, and then the resources. More than 300 maps are available in that platforms. Exposure vulnerability maps, risk maps, different climate change maps, and there are reporting tool, hazard risk maps, and all these our partners. And about you'll see that about why this disaster risk information platform and how is this going to have support the government officials, particularly using this one to identify the potential risk of particular disasters and this is the metadata viewer, which is called the data of the data. So if you go here, you can identify particular hazards. So it is accessible through your phone. Can you get it? So if you identify the cyclone sub-indicator is the exposure and the field exposure different areas, road, railway, settlement, population, rural market, forest, potato, maize, jute, almond. So all this, if you select one, it will show you the data of the data, where it is collected and how it is collected, and from which areas. So this will provide this metadata information, and the information viewer will find the disaster risk map. And disaster risk map, if you want to see the impact of particular disaster risks of particular districts, this will help you to identify all these Bangladesh districts in one map. Suppose Bagherhat, we can choose the road maps. But my personal experience, if you select all this, it becomes hedgy. It's quite difficult to identify the impacted areas. And then the cyclone, hazard level, down. So this will show this information locating the district in bordering with different color, and also you can also upload the level of cyclone for the whole Bangladesh. You can also go for other districts here, and also other hazard areas. And then climate projection maps. Again, here you will identify the districts, reverse factor, precipitation, selection type is what you want to see here. Historical analysis, or annual anomaly, or seasonal anomaly. So, take an annual anomaly, annual seasons, select an RCP. RCP means representative concentrated pathways. So it was used based on air fiber fifth assessment report. I think sixth assessment report has changed that scenario analysis. It's the kind of scenarios. What will be the future impact of climate change? What will be the future scenarios for this one? The RCP 4.5 is the moderate one. This means that all the countries of the world, they will take some sort of climate actions, or they will address climate change issues. So considering this one, here it's 2030 to 40 and 2040 to 2041. Let's take 2030 to 2040. It shows some information here, and also legend is here. So based on this average one, so what will be the changes? Future changes. What are the future changes by 2030 to 2041? I think extreme level information will give some more
Should go for break and then come back and continue. So not the tea break, and during tea break we can also talk about this platform, and then we can discuss how we can utilize it if you have any questions. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. So tea break for
We come back just at 11. Jayad bhai will continue this one, navigating the platform and also discussing if anyone has any questions, but yeah.
I want to just take a few minutes to discuss how the DRIP is feeding and contributes to a larger UN-wide objective of making risk information available under the SG's data strategy. And in some respects, what you see on the screen where it says the National Risk Information Portal, this is a product very similar to the DRIP. The DRIP obviously is well ahead. We're not proposing in any way to bring the what we call the NRIP to Bangladesh. But as was confirmed by the last speaker, we're very interested to collaborate with the UNCT and the HCT to make DRIP even more useful to you as users of risk information. So I'm just going to share with you a few slides to walk you through what is NRIP. NRIP is focused on standardizing risk information. We're all aware, whether we're UN partners, INGOs, national NGOs, researchers, that we're producing a lot of risk information. Sector ministries are also producing a lot of risk information themselves through state budgets, but also through development and humanitarian assistance. They're also receiving funding to do various risk assessments. By and large, I think we can all recognize that a lot of that risk information is not openly available. The DRIP certainly is an attempt, a very good attempt, and a very good product that will make that risk information more readily available. Where it complements, where our work complements what's going on in Bangladesh is that we're trying to organize the risk information according to a standard risk taxonomy. The International Science Council last year, and as was approved by the General Assembly, agreed on a hazard definition and classification. I've just put on the screen kind of an overview. The classification covers around 302 various types of hazards. Could be societal hazards, could be technological hazards around industrial spills, could be environmental hazards, as I put on the screen. And why we're doing this is so that we can compare countries in terms of the risk landscape, but also how much information they actually have available and have generated nationally. And so we are putting together, as UNDRR, a very similar product to the DRIP in other countries. And we are discussing with UNDP and other partners how we might bring some of the feature set of the NRIP into the DRIP, recognizing that the DRIP is a premier product for Bangladesh, one that has been endorsed by the government, and we very much see opportunities to collaborate to bring some of the risk information that we're collecting into the DRIP. And let me just pause on what I mean by risk information that we're collecting. Because UNDRR is a non-resident, non-operational UN agency, we rely very much on our global network, perhaps even more so than other UN agencies that I've worked with, where UNDRR has cooperation agreements with all the national space agencies that are providing Earth observation information. We have cooperation agreements with the Global Earthquake Modeling Foundation, agreements with Cybersecurity Foundation at Georgetown University. So we've amassed a very broad network of international experts and sources of risk information. And what we're doing under the national platforms for other countries is putting all this information under one-stop clearinghouse of risk information. So very much it would be tied to the DRIP in terms of making available that risk information, or at least making users aware that the risk information exists, so you don't have to do a risk assessment all the time, that you would go to a product like the DRIP that would give you a picture of what risk assessments have already been done in a particular area of Bangladesh. For instance, some of this work we've already started to support in Bangladesh. UNDRR is financing the downstream of Inform. This is in keeping with our mission to make risk data available to multiple users. What the NRIP will actually look like, this is a country context example. It's obviously not Bangladesh, it's Costa Rica, but this gives you an overview of what we're doing in other countries, trying to make the NRIP or DRIP in your context a multi-purpose, one-stop national risk information clearinghouse. So whether you're UNICEF or you're Oxfam or you're an HCT member, you would go to this product and it would link you to Inform, it would link you to all the geo data, Earth observation data that is available for your country, and it would put it and order that information specific to the hazard that you're interested in. And again, we recognize we won't have information on 300 hazards in each country, but that's also part of the purpose of this platform, is to demonstrate what the current level of risk information is. So for example, where we've rolled out this product in other countries, we know that flood maps, for instance, in other countries are on average 10 years old. So clearly in the context of climate change, and we're seeing this everywhere, even in, I'm Canadian, we're certainly seeing it in Canada with the floods we experienced last year, that our flood maps are grossly out of date. And this system would be able to give you that information at a click, essentially, because it would tell you which information is currently available. So it's an aggregation platform. We do not host any data. Unlike the drip is a product that is taking some of that information and synthesizing it and putting it into a platform. We're not doing that with NRIP. We are essentially an aggregator of risk information using that standard taxonomy, and we're drawing from multiple sources, recognizing that there's scope to improve UN performance on how we share risk information across UN agencies. And very much we're seeing the NRIP in other countries being used to converge UNCTs to start sharing information about the risk assessments that they've done. Not necessarily sharing raw data sets, but sharing information that they've done, say, for example, flood assessments for social infrastructure, so they know which hospitals or health centers and schools are in flood zones. At the same time, a platform like this would enable a humanitarian planner to look at what risk assessment is around particular hazards, again, say, using flood as an example in terms of situating temporary camps. We've designed ours as an extremely low maintenance, low cost platform, mainly because it's an aggregator. It's a database that links you to existing risk information. And it's very similar to the DRIP, and this is why we're so interested to collaborate with the team that is leading on the DRIP, is that we both recognize the multiple use cases such a system engenders. Whether you're a sector planner in the Ministry of Transport, or you're developing your common country assessment, and you want to get an overview of what the risk landscape looks like in your country. This is just a stylized example of what the website, which is going live later this month, will look like. We're targeting 50 countries by the end of next year that we will have NRIPs up and running. Again, Bangladesh, not surprisingly, is well ahead with the development of the DRIP. But at the same time, as I mentioned, we see tremendous opportunity to link some of the standardization, harmonization of risk information into the DRIP. Again, we're looking at links to Disinventar, the next generation Disinventar. For those of you who may not be aware, Disinventar is the loss and damage platform that UNDRR has disseminated to member states. It's quite old. A second generation product is being developed now. It will be ready for rollout by the end of this year. But ultimately, we see the NRIP and the second generation Disinventar eventually converging, so the user experience is a more fluid one at UN member state level. Again, this is just a stylized version of how we're classifying the information. For you, for Bangladesh, you've done this essentially in terms of capturing country profile, climate information. Where we see scope for further refinement is on the hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. Recognizing that vulnerability, for example, is a very complex topic, has different definitions applied in different ways. Say, for instance, for targeting for social protection versus vulnerability to, say, flood risk or biological hazards. So what the NRIP would do is essentially puts all the information collected on vulnerability in a country from multiple sources in one place. This is just an example of what the system will look like. Again, this is my last point, and of interest to local partners in Bangladesh is what's called a data available and gap analysis. Again, what we see, that quick kind of infographic, that will tell you what hazard information you have or do not have and geotagged across different admin levels in your country. And what we really want to do and see that information used is to develop a roadmap of how to fill those knowledge gaps on risk. Not to say that UNDRR is necessarily in a position to finance covering all of those data gaps, but what I'm suggesting is helping governments develop that roadmap to fill those risk data gaps, and then having a conversation within government and with its development and humanitarian partners to start filling out those gaps where they exist. Again, using the example where data sets are very old, or they're not linked to recent exposure data based on population and demographics and different population dynamics in the country, that this system would allow you to quickly get that information at your fingertips. So I'll pause there. Just my last point, again, is just to, this is a UNDRR product that we're offering to multiple countries. Obviously, it's not a prescriptive approach, where obviously, as is the case in Bangladesh, there's been tremendous work already, and there's solid scaffolding already in place and a foundation already established. I think our role would just be to be guided by partners in Bangladesh about how we might be able to contribute to further development of the DRIP. With that, I thank you very much, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
And we want to see you. And so you can please turn on the video and...
Oh, certainly. Sorry, I was trying to save bandwidth, but here I am. It's quite, it's about 6:30 here in Geneva. So apologies for the lighting. My family is still sleeping in the background.
Jafar bhai? We cannot see. Can you take out the presentation?
Yes, please stop the sharing.
Can you please turn off the sharing session? Then you can see where, now we can see. Yeah. Yes.
I hope you can see us as well.
Also, I invite the
No, there's a camera. He can. Yes.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
Any questions you have to Andrew? Please. Anyone? Any question, comment, feedback? Kazi bhai.
There is the expectation that we will standardize our hazard information based on the Science Council approved document, and there is a expectation from the global level. What we are doing is a good, but we need to some the standardization process. If we can do that through the support of the UNDRR, that could be fantastic, because we are well ahead any other country. One of the thank you Andrew for supporting Bangladesh on the Informed Risks Index rollout. This is the first time we did that exercise in the 529 union. We will share that finding, but thanks to Andrew, where we just Andrew initiated the discussion that what you need support from the UNDRR, not money, technical support. So technical money will give in the World Bank, not the Andrew. So Andrew will give the technical support on the any of the work you are doing, any of the questions and clarity, he could clarify that. But we are very happy that when we are developing the Nexus strategy, we get the enormous support from the UNDRR and even OCHA. Because of the, without their support, we cannot come up with that strategy and endorsed by government. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any reflection?
Yes, Ramana.
Ramana.
Thank you, Andrew, and also the previous presenter. I just wanted to understand, so are we suggesting a different platform now? Like we have the drip, and are we then again with the, this was explained, but I couldn't catch it. So are we suggesting yet another platform
No.
with the hub? Okay.
Yeah, let me be categorically clear. We are not suggesting duplicating the wonderful work that's already been invested with DRIP. Our view is that you continue to invest in DRIP. It's a platform that has received government endorsement. Referencing the earlier speaker's comment, it very much, we would see kind of the technical support focusing on standardization. We have already an online tool that has been rolled out in the other countries that risk officers that are sitting in RCOs or in the National Disaster Management Agencies that are financed by UNDRR are actually using that online tool to take the risk information that's already existing and putting it into the tool so that it is standardized according to the hazard taxonomy. So some of that work is kind of data clerk work. And that's something that, quite frankly, we could look at doing in Bangladesh so that standardization is, it becomes a feature of the DRIP.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Looks like no. Andrew, any last remarks?
No, just to thank everyone. I think as colleagues know, particularly UN colleagues under the UN data strategy, sharing risk information and data transparency are a UN priority, and very much platforms like the DRIP move us along from kind of aspirational targets to reality. So we're very much looking forward to working with the DRIP team and the broader UN community and non-UN partners. We very much see risk information as being kind of the point of convergence between development and humanitarian actors. Like the UNDRR in having risk, being the UN agency with risk in its name, we are developing some companion tools. One is around how you would use the NRIP, or in this context, the DRIP, to inform the Common Country Assessment and Cooperation Framework. In parallel, a second package is being developed on how to use risk information through tools such as NRIP in other countries for the HPC. So for those HPC countries that are developing HNOs and HRPs, again, we are trying to position the NRIP as that information platform on risk for use by humanitarian partners. So very much, the work on the Nexus, we see the NRIP as being a standard product offer for Nexus countries, and indeed for any country that is looking at integrating development humanitarian peace programming, all of whom require the best available risk science, and that's what we're trying to provide through the NRIP. So again, thanks very much for the opportunity. We're very keen to keep the conversation alive and see how we can collaborate. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Give him a big round of applause for Andrew. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining very early in the morning. Thank you so much, Andrew. So our next session is about the informed risk index. Jafar Bhai will do that, but before that, it's been sessions after session. So let's do a kind of a small task in the table. It's kind of another icebreaker, if you may say so. So can you go to different tables? Only 3 tables. So can we have 7 tables of 5? Yeah. So okay. Yeah, sure. So the question is, it's like a 5-10 minute exercise. So the question is, it's for the group, for the table. You can work in the group. So question is, what one word or two words would you use to describe the humanitarian response culture in Bangladesh? So discuss within yourselves, come up with a word that describes the whole thing. You think one or two words max. So what one word or two words would you use to describe the humanitarian response culture in Bangladesh?
Culture.
So the current scenario, what does Bangladesh do and all these things. So one or two words, and we will give floor and select a representative from your table as well who will explain it within 1 minute. Come with one word from each table. Humanitarian response culture.